What's your name?
Ron Flores.
How many years did you play professional baseball?
I played a total of 10 seasons of pro baseball.
What do you do now?
I pastor a church here in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Coming up on this edition of Life Around the Seams, the pitcher becomes the preacher. Ron Flores went from praying to the baseball gods to just flat-out praying. Okay, I know all of this is a stretch. This is really corny, but work with me. Our guest is Ron Flores. He has a fascinating story about getting into baseball, his family with faith and with baseball, and he is our guest on Life Around the Seams.
Former Major League pitcher Jim Bouton once wrote, "You spend a good piece of your life gripping a baseball, and in the end, it turns out it was the other way around all the time." Welcome to Life Around the Seams, a podcast about baseball people who have interesting stories from between the lines, and sometimes even more interesting stories outside the lines. Here's your host, Josh Sushan.
Great intro.
Yeah, right. All right, Ron, thanks for joining me on this edition. It's good to see you. It's been since, I think, 2006 was the last time I saw you, probably.
Yeah, it's 05, 06. You were, prowling the Oakland clubhouse, looking for anybody that you can corner in their locker to get a bit here and there. And I was just new to the big leagues then. And, I was only new to the big leagues. I never was there long enough to be anything but new. But I was happy to get cornered by you and to fill up your notebook, because to me that was like a dream come true.
Okay, so this is going to be very self-serving. This is going to be, I might need Tommy John surgery because I'm going to pat myself on the back so hard. But I'm going to start off by reading an article that I wrote about Ron Flores. Okay. This article appeared, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to get to the money quote. Okay. This appeared June 28th of 2005. Okay. Dateline is Oakland, California. Here we go. As the 870th overall selection in the 2000 draft, Ron Flores knew his odds of reaching the major leagues were slim. So he did something rare for a 29th round pick. He held out. Not for the truly big bucks, but for a few extra $1,000 to complete his final 2 semesters at USC. Unlike the majority of Major League ball players, Flores went back to college and earned his degree. The 25-year-old Flores, who the Oakland Athletics called up from the minors 10 days ago to join the bullpen, is the ultimate underdog. Never previously on the A's 40-man roster until this year. Never selected in the Rule 5 draft by another team. Never appeared as a top 10 prospect by Baseball America. Never even been in a major league training camp. But all he did was keep getting people out. A 3.43 ERA in 219 games and 9.58 strikeouts per 9 innings, even if it seemed like nobody was paying attention. All this is why Rick Magnanti, the Oakland A's area scout for Southern California, who signed and scouted Barry Zito and Bobby Crosby, among hundreds of others since he started his career in 1981, said Flores is, quote, "without a doubt, the most gratifying signing of my career. I still get goosebumps just thinking about him. It's a feel-good story. It's been a long road for him to reach the majors. It's a good example for kids out there. Yes, I can get a degree and play in the big leagues."
Wow. That's some quality writing there, pal.
Well, thank you very much. Again, paging James Andrews. I need Tommy John surgery for patting myself on the back here.
I still have a couple of those articles. My dad has them in his display, case. That felt like I had arrived. It felt like that was the culmination of 20 years, really. I would do it all again just for that one article.
Oh, you're too kind. Tell me about Rick Magnanti.
Yeah, he was the one scout that I talked to in college. I hardly even pitched at USC my first 2 years. I went there because my older brother went there. He was 4 years older than me, and went to USC. And he was a freshman in college when I was a freshman in high school, and all he did was become the most winningest pitcher in USC history. The guy he went like 42-8 in 4 years. It was ridiculous, And so he's obviously a legacy. And as he's getting ready to leave after his senior year, I'm a senior in high school, getting ready to graduate and trying to figure out college. And I had decent grades, and I was a lefty, and I could throw strikes, and I had a pretty good run in high school. But USC gave me a shot to go to school there, almost seemingly just because Randy was my older brother, and he was pretty good before me, and I could bolster the team GPA. That's kind of the reason why I was there. So my freshman year, I think I threw 15 innings. Barely. My sophomore year, I think I threw even less, like 10 innings. And I'm halfway through my junior year, my junior season, and I'm still like a third of an inning a week. I just wasn't part of the plans. And somewhere in the middle of my junior season, something clicked, kind of grew into my body a little bit. I figured out how to throw my changeup for strikes, was able to hit spots. Almost like I kind of grew into a pitcher in the middle of my junior year, and I caught fire. Like there's a bunch of games in a row where I was just pitching really, really well. And Rick Magnante was the one scout that reached out and said, hey, would you play? Would you consider? I mean, I was obviously going to be a late round pick, and I wasn't going to be, it wasn't going to be for huge money or anything like that. But he was just doing his homework. Like, would this be a wasted draft pick? Would you sign if we drafted you? And I, of course, didn't know what to say, and I was overwhelmed. This is towards the end of my junior season, and we're getting ready to go to the playoffs, and we ended up going to the College World Series. But I said, I don't know. Let me call you back. And I called my brother. Like, what do I say? And so he was 3 years into his professional career. So he had been down that road with being drafted and all that. And he was asking me, he's like, well, do you want to? And I'm like, well, of course I want to. But, I my whole life had just been copying what my older brother did. I mean, I went to the same school as him. I did the same sports when we were a kid. I just followed my big brother. I was just the younger brother that just was smiling along and playing along with my older brother. It's like, but Randy, you came back to your senior year. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do too? And he's like, Ronnie, he calls me Ronnie. Ronnie, if you want to, like, if it's the right call to leave, then think about it, And I'm okay. Well, what do I tell the scout? And he said, well, if I get drafted on the first day, I'll sign. And I didn't even know what that meant. It meant, I don't know, the first 10 rounds or so. I think I don't know what it is now. 10 rounds.
Back then it was the first 10 rounds.
10 rounds. If I get drafted on the first day, because it sounds like you know what you're talking about, right. I had no idea. But if I get drafted on the first day, it's a slam dunk. If I don't get drafted on the first day, it'll take a big decision because it's USC and I want to come back. And so I told him that, not having zero idea what any of it meant. And he goes, really? Huh? First day, huh? All right, well, have a good day, Ron. And that was it. And I was like, cool. I really showed him, and went along with my life. And thinking, no big deal. I was thinking maybe this is going to, break the seal. Maybe other teams will call. Nobody called. No one cared. I think Magnante was at a USC-UCLA game that I started at. I was a starting pitcher, towards the end of my junior season, and I pitched really well against UCLA. They were the number 2 team in the country at the time, and we won like 5-2 or something. And he was just taking a flyer. Mm-hmm. And then come draft day, it's right before the College World Series. We had just won the regional, super regional in Georgia Tech, and we were practicing, getting ready to go to Omaha. And the draft was that day. I didn't even know the draft was that day. I had no idea. And one of our clubhouse guys, hey, Flo, congratulations, man. 29th round. Like, 29th round of what? What is it you're referring to? You got drafted, the Oakland A's. What? What are you talking about?
So you had not talked to Rick between that conversation and the draft?
I think he called me maybe 1 or 2 more times and was just confirming, like, hey, would you do it? And I was like, by then I kind of figured out like what I was asking. Like, I'm asking for the top 10 rounds. It's just not realistic, And he was making the case of, hey, Ron, if you were to come back to your senior year, all 3 of your team's weekend starters, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's how college baseball is. There's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then a midweek game on Tuesday. I was the midweek starter, and I was a closer on weekends. And Rick was like, Ron, all 3 of those weekend starters are coming back next year. So if you come back next year, you're not going to improve your draft status. You're going to be the midweek starter and the kind of the last guy on the totem pole. It would be a good idea to so he knew the drill.
Yeah.
He knew what I was facing, and he was right. It was the right call. But I wasn't expecting it at all. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, my gosh, I could actually leave. I could go from being the midweek starter and closer that was instrumental in the postseason run that we had, and it was fun, but not a guy, not like a major prospect, to all of a sudden now, like, I think I might leave. I think I might do it. And I ended up pulling the trigger and signing. It was crazy, man. I wasn't expecting it at all.
That's awesome. That's totally awesome. We're going to rewind to early stages of your life. You started to talk about your brother.
Yeah.
Explain the relationship with Randy and like what other sports you guys would play. What else?
Yeah.
Were you like the annoying younger brother? Did you just idolize him or what?
Yeah, I mean, I was the annoying younger brother. My brother nicknamed me the noise generator.
Okay.
Because I was just a loud kid, an annoying loud kid, And we have a sister in between us. He's 4 years older, Randy and then my sister Robin, who's actually on staff at our church as well. She's the most spiritual one of all of us, There's the three of us, and between the three of us, I was the young, annoying, loudmouth kid, and that was just following my brother around and following my dad around, and so we played a lot of soccer in Southern California. That was a big Saturday sport. And my dad, we were always active. We always used to say that whatever ball was nearest to my dad, that's the sport that we played. And so it was.
Did your dad play sports when he was younger?
Yeah, he played. He was a baseball guy. He played intramural baseball at the Bible school that he went to.
Okay.
So it wasn't an accredited type situation. It wasn't NAI or anything like that. But it was. He was the MVP of his Bible school baseball team. He was 3-hole hitter and the first baseman, and he was a stud.
Okay.
But yeah, so as a kid, we were always super competitive. We used to play hallway hockey with spoons from the kitchen.
Okay.
And my dad would make a tape ball, and we'd use the wooden spoons, and it was just whatever we played, it was always loser does dishes. Or loser has to do chores. It was super competitive, and we weren't allowed to be disrespectful to my dad or to be mean to each other. And so it was just like we learned this healthy competitiveness, And so within that kind of environment, I'm following my brother around. Where we played soccer a bunch. We played a bunch of baseball. When my brother turned maybe 11 or 12, he decided he didn't want to play baseball anymore. All of his other buddies grew up and got taller and bigger, but he stayed the same size. He was really small. And so he decided, and of course I followed him, that he wanted to join a bowling league.
How old is he at this point?
He was 11, 12.
Okay.
And I was 8 or 9, whatever,
Uh-huh.
And so he, out of the blue, says, "Dad, I want to join a bowling league." And my dad understood, like, okay, you're small, whatever, okay. Maybe it'll be a phase. Bro, 2 years, 2 seasons of bowling. I had my own ball and everything. I had
your own shoes?
My own shoes, the bag, we just...
Shine the ball?
Shine the ball. We were, we had secondhand smoke issues from going in there as 9-year-olds, and I had a 91 average, I think, for 2 years.
Okay.
And that was 2 years, and my dad, of course, is just, biting his tongue the whole time, like, my 2 athlete boys are stuffed into a bowling alley for 2 years. Until, grace of God, my brother finally decides, I think, right before high school, he was going to play a season before he got to high school. And I joined, of course, I'm going to play too. And I was, 9 years old at the time when we came back into baseball. And that was, once I came back, that was my sport. It was baseball or bust. So we went to the same high school, and then I followed him to USC, and the rest is history.
This story better be true about your dad.
Okay.
Your dad called you in elementary school. He was put on hold for 15 minutes while they found you and brought you to the office, and he had a very important message to tell you. He needed to tell you that he beat Super Mario.
It's true. It's all true, man. I can't believe you found that story, but it's true.
Well, you tweeted it, so that's why it better be true.
It's true. It was true. I was in 5th grade. And for Christmas, they got us the Super Mario thing, and that was the most expensive thing we've ever got. My dad and mom were both pastors, and so we were broke, and we weren't poverty stricken, but we didn't do a ton of expensive gifts like that. And so one Christmas we got the Nintendo Power Pack. It was the one with the it was like the floor mat with little dots on it, and you run track and field.
Oh yeah.
And you can do you can jump and do triple jumps and things like that. And we timed it, of course, where you just step off of the pad and your guy just flies into the crowd. It was so much fun. And we had Super Mario Brothers, and we tried all Christmas break to get through it, and we never could. And then we go back to school, early January, and it was probably the first full week of January. I get a call. I'm in the middle of 5th grade class, and someone from the office comes and says, "Hey, Ron, you got to go to the office to get." And back then, if you get a phone call, like someone's died,
right,
or some like, emergency. And so I'm everyone's like, ooh,
right.
All the other, like, what happened, And I get my backpack and walk over, and my dad, what happened? Is everything okay? And he's like, Ronnie, I did it. What? Yeah, Ronnie, I did it. I beat Super Mario. You're not going to believe it. I beat it. Dad, are you serious? That's what he was on hold for 15 minutes. And I go down there, and he's, are you serious? He's like, yeah, there's so many turtles with firepower. You have to have firepower. You're not going to get through the turtles with axes unless you have firepower. And I'm like, Dad, I got to go back to class. Like, I was a fifth grader talking to my dad like he was a little boy. Like, that's the kind of upbringing, the fun-loving upbringing that I had.
Oh, my goodness. I love it. All right, so you guys grew up in Pico Rivera. According to Google Maps, that's about halfway between Dodger Stadium and Angel Stadium, give or take.
Yep.
How often would you go to both of those ballparks?
We were not Angel fans. We were Dodger fans. My dad made certain of that.
Okay.
His dad, Gramps, we called him. He was a huge Dodger fan. And back then it was the California Angels, and they weren't any good. And so we were Dodger people, We went to a bunch, not a bunch, but we went to plenty of games as a kid.
Is there a most famous game that you remember seeing?
Probably the one that my brother and my sister and my dad and I talk about the most was Game 1 of the World Series, Kirk Gibson's home run.
You were at that?
No, we weren't there.
Oh, okay.
But we were watching it, and the story is that my brother and I were watching the game, a lot, on the TV. My dad had called some type of church meeting. He's pastor in this church in Pico Rivera, and he says, like, we got to have this meeting with these people, and we're doing a prayer thing, and we're getting together at our house, And so these 5 or 6 people come, and they're in the den talking and praying and thinking about church stuff. And he's like, guys, you guys got to be quiet over here as we're watching the game. And so we're quietly talking about, we're coming back. And then Gibson hits that home run, and we're screaming and going nuts. And he's coming over there trying to pray in the other room. And he's like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, Dad, Gibson just hit it out. And he, of course, he's like, wait, hang on. And he's watching the TV with us, like, and he puts his arms down, like, I got to go back to the meeting, And he uses that example to this day as a reason. He's like, Ron, if there's an important sporting event that you can watch with your kids or an important thing, blow off the church meeting and go spend time with your kids. You'll never get those times back. So we still think about that today.
So I was going to jump ahead to this later, but this is a good segue now. So spirituality was a big part of your life growing up.
Yeah.
This wasn't like something out of the blue that you decided to do after your career was over, because you said your mom and dad were both pastors.
Yeah, it really was. I had never had any aspirations of getting into ministry, I mean, when I was in maybe 4th or 5th grade, I was thinking, I'm going to be just like my dad. I'll pastor a church someday. But when once I started playing ball, and especially when I got to the big leagues, it's baseball or bust. I mean, you have been around that. The lifestyle and the world of big league baseball is intoxicating. It's amazing. And so when I got to that level, it was, and even before that, it was, I'd like to stay in the game as long as I can. It's what's the line that most guys hang on to the game longer than they should, not because of their love for the game, but because of their inability to function anywhere outside of the game. That's their life, it's their world, and so I'll just find a gig in the baseball world. And so I had never had any aspirations of getting into ministry, but I was every off season I was at my dad's church, and I was as involved as we could get. And my wife and I had said, once we retire from baseball, we're going to dive headfirst into assisting my dad at the church. I just wanted to go and be around. That was our world. I was at church, Sunday in the day, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, and a couple, usually once another day out of the week, all the time. That was just, we were church rats. That's where we grew up, And so you're right. It wasn't out of the blue, but it definitely wasn't something that I was aspiring to be my whole life.
Yeah. When Randy gets drafted and he's playing minor league baseball, once you're out of school at summertime, do you ever go see him on the road with whatever minor league city he was at?
When he was playing, but I was in high school or college?
Yeah.
No. We would wait until he got home. I mean, it was...
So you never really got to, really be around him and know what it was like?
No. I mean, he told stories, and it was cool, but it was... minor league baseball is weird, man. It sounds like it's not. It sounds like fun externally when you're looking at it from the outside looking in. But when you're in the middle of it, it's not something that you want to invite people to be a part of. To be a part of my 2-bedroom apartment with 6 guys staying in there, and there's no couch, and our coffee table is turned upside down laundry basket, and all we have in there is air mattresses and a TV and a PlayStation. Like, that's not something that you want to invite your girlfriend to or anybody to at all,
Yeah.
And so it's like, let me just get through the season and come home. He was the same way as well. It was, I'll finish the season out and I'll see you in the off season.
I read something on Twitter the other day about how some players were returning the television that they bought from Walmart because Walmart has a 90-day policy.
Took advantage of that a lot.
Yeah. So then you'd wait 2 or 3 days, and then one of your other roommates would go and buy the TVs and then return it 3 months after that.
It's a great setup, man. It really is. Guys had it down to the day. Where, and you keep all the box, you keep the box, the packaging, all the wires, and you don't mess with the TV because that sucker's got to go back in a couple months, And so, and Walmart knew, like, I think the lady in Memphis knew us by name by the end of it because there was like all of us in the same apartment complex that would go there every couple of months to return. We have to return this thing because it's not working anymore. And that was minor league life, man. You make it work,
What are some of the other minor league life stories how you make it work? You mentioned the air mattresses, but you got married when you were still in the minor league. So how did that change your living situation?
Oh, well, I mean, it wasn't Animal House. I couldn't do that anymore,
right.
And so, there's levels of existence that you're willing to accept when you can't afford it,
Mm-hmm.
And so the minor league life it's however you can make it work in terms of an apartment, and apartments will, they don't always like to work with 22-year-old punks
right.
that don't have a down payment, or a deposit or anything, So when I got married, it was I was engaged right before I went to a season in AA, and then when we got back after that season, we got married, and I went to AAA in Sacramento with her, and we still couldn't just because I'm married doesn't mean I'm getting paid more. Like, it's not like the military where
right.
you get paid more for certain things like that. I was trying to make it work on that same first year AAA salary, and so I still had a roommate, and we had our oldest son at the time, and so it was like, can I find a roommate that will live with a guy and his wife and their little kid? And of course we did. It was actually a buddy of mine that's still a good buddy of mine. His name is Mike Ziegler. He was in the A's organization for years, and he's actually a scout, I think, now with the Angels organization. And he was willing to live. It was a great gig. He was willing to live for years.
Did he at least get some free meals that your wife would cook at all out of this?
Yeah, he would, and we got babysitting out of him every now and then,
Uh-huh.
And then the next year we came with another kid. My daughter, my oldest son, Ethan, was with us right away, and then Julia was born, and she came, and they all loved Zig, And so all guys that are broke but have families got to find somebody that
you can trust
and will split the rent. And I can't believe Ziegler didn't demand that we pay 2/3 of the rent because we had 4 bodies to his 1.
Wow, that's a good friend. That's
really,
a good teammate.
He was the man, and the kids still talk of him and love him, and he's a good buddy.
Did you ever do the host families? I know Modesto would do that. Not every city would do that. Did you ever do a host family?
I did in short season, right out of the draft,
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver, BC. Which I'm glad they had that because I wouldn't have known what to do right out of the draft, And it was, but that was the only year. And then the other year was when I played a year of independent ball, my last full season. I got released by the Cincinnati Reds on the last day of spring training in 2009, and hung around Vegas for a month waiting for a job that never came, and then finally signed with the Long Island Ducks in the Atlantic League. And if you think that minor league pay is small, independent league it's like the meal money. That's the salary, Mm-hmm. And so they had host moms, and we stayed with a host family out there. This host gal was awesome. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some baseball stories. You played, now in the early 2000s, the Oakland A's did this really weird thing with their farm system, where nowadays every team is required to have a AAA team, a AA team, a high A team, a low A team, short season rookie. Yeah. But in the early 2000s, the A's decided we don't want a low A affiliate, we want 2 high A affiliates,
right.
And they're both going to be in the same league.
Yeah.
So Modesto and Visalia were both Oakland A's affiliates, and you were 1 year in each one of those.
That's right.
Is there any awkwardness stories that you remember where you were competing against someone who is in the same organization as you, but yet you're competing against them to get moved up to AA, and you're competing on the field?
Oh yeah, I mean there was weirdness. I know that they did that for a few years, and the year before that I was in Modesto, the guys talked all the time about the year prior to that. Modesto and Visalia brawled.
They brawled?
They brawled. Same organization. They were just in spring training together a month ago, and somebody was hitting somebody else a bunch and whatever, and they got charged. And the entire Oakland A's organization was having a fight on the middle of the field in Visalia, So
I wonder what Keith Littman thought about that when he got that report.
Like, please stay healthy, Somebody stop this madness, So yeah, it was a little weird, especially because there 10 teams in the Cal League at the time, and there's 2 divisions of 5, and so 2/5 of the Northern Division was Oakland A's teams. It was a little odd, But what it did is like it exponentially increased your likelihood of playing at high A,
Right.
I mean, there was no low A to go to. So it was either you're in advanced A ball or you're going to rookie league. So
would players kind of think like, okay, Modesto's really like the low A team, or Visalia's really like the low A team, or did you feel like it was balanced pretty even?
it's pretty balanced. They specifically like addressed that in spring training. Like, we're going to make the teams even. We're not going to stack a team to be the good one and the one's the cheapy team. Mm-hmm. It was pretty balanced. But yeah, it was kind of funny that you were buddies with somebody in spring training, and now a week or two later, you got to treat them like they're the enemy. You know? So it was an odd setup.
So you spent a lot of time on buses up and down Interstate 99 in California.
Oh yeah.
What was your least favorite hotel in the California League?
Wow, the least. You're having me go back a long way. Bakersfield has to be probably one of the worst places on earth. Pardon to anybody who lives there, because I'm California too. But the park was as bad as I've ever been to, And in fact, I don't know if I'm sure they've made renovations by now, but they had the giant batter's eye in center field that was bigger than normal and higher than normal because the batter was facing the sunset. And so oftentimes they'd have to wait until like 7:35, 7:40 just for the sun to go behind the batter's eye, because they couldn't start the game with the sun right in batter's eyes.
Yeah.
And so and the park was ugly. It was just the whole vibe was bad, And so there were some great road trips, and there was Rancho Cucamonga was fun, mm-hmm. San Bernardino was fun. The SoCal cities were usually pretty. Lake Elsinore was awesome. Mm-hmm. Bakersfield was rough.
Yeah,
that was a rough one.
I remember the Lamplighter Inn in Visalia.
Yeah.
I don't remember it well, but I remember it a lot.
Visalia was one, actually, when I was in Modesto, did we do turnarounds to Visalia? Because it was only a couple-hour drive.
You might have done turnarounds.
We may have done some turnarounds, and so I never really actually stayed in the Road Hotel in Visalia, and then the next year I was in Visalia, and then I do remember guys complaining all the time about having to come to that park. It wasn't the funnest city.
Yeah. When you got to Midland in 2003, was that the first year for the park in Midland, or wasn't it fairly new?
It was fairly new. I think it was maybe 2 seasons prior to my arrival there in 2003. It was really new. It was a beautiful ballpark. It was awesome, but it's Midland, and so it was the dry desert. It was not a whole lot to do there. Super windy, There was one game we actually got winded out.
Okay.
First time I ever experienced that. It was too windy to play baseball, But it really was a great park, and I had fun in Midland. It was a good time.
How much did that teach you about, this is how I have to pitch when it's a windy, dry place where the ball's going to fly?
I think it gave me an advantage being a fastball changeup guy, in that I wasn't counting on the moisture of the air to catch my slider as much as maybe other guys were counting on. Changeups will work in whether they're cutting or sinking or running or whatever, and so it really does. There's, what's the line? Keep the ball down. You want to get moved up, keep the ball down. Especially in the Texas League, and there's certain leagues where Cal League, Texas League, Pacific Coast League, you got to keep the ball down. You're not doing yourself any favors by keeping giving guys shots to get the ball out, because there's so many parks that the ball just flies.
Craig Lefferts, I believe, is the pitching coach.
Lefty.
And I remember Lefferts because he pitched for the Giants, and growing up in the Bay Area, I remember him. I think he pitched for the A's and the Giants.
Yep.
Was because he was somewhat similar in size to you, and I believe that he was fastball changeup, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
Were you able to learn a lot from him?
Big time. Lefty actually was the guy that taught me how to throw a slider. It was funny when I first got to AA, and I was working out with the AA team in spring training. and I had just finished 2 seasons of A-ball, the previous 2 seasons. Did pretty good, and it looked like it would be my time to get moved up to Double-A. And Lefty was going to be the pitching coach there. Lefty, his big pitch was the screwball.
Okay.
He was a huge screwball guy when he was in the big leagues. And so he came to me and said, hey, Flo, I've been given the assignment to teach you the screwball. Because we're both lefties, and you know what, you don't have a good breaking ball, and so let me teach you how to throw a screwball. Maybe it'll work because you got a good changeup. Maybe the screwball will work. And so he gave me all these drills during spring training where he had me, like, what was the drill? To put a pillow, prop up a pillow on a bed, in a hotel, take a knee, and then cup a Coke can, like make a circle around the top of the Coke can with your fingers, and then try to opposite pronate your throw and have the Coke can flip end over the pillow to try to get used to the movement of really cranking your arm to pronation, And so he taught me that, and it was after like 2 weeks, I'm like, bro, my arm's going to fall off. Like, I don't know how in the world anybody would ever do this, And by then he had seen me actually throw the changeup in games, and he's like, you know what, your changeup is fine. Just use it. He actually finally said, well, let's stop doing this. But he taught me, because at that point I was throwing just curveballs. I was throwing fastball, changeup, and a roly-poly. 1 out of every 10 was a good pitch curveball. And he taught me the grip for a slider and gave me some simple cues on how to make it work. And it really clicked. It really did. And it really was, I think, that bit of advice that got me over the hump to move up into higher levels of baseball, that I can actually use a breaking ball. It wasn't the best, but it was serviceable, and I could throw it for strikes and use it to get lefties out. That was actually able to advance my career a lot faster than before.
Let's talk about AAA Sacramento.
Yeah.
Now, when you were there, so you were there for parts of 5 years, and that was a time when Sacramento River Cats are still fairly new. That ballpark is fairly new, and they won the PCL title in 03 and 04. They went to the playoffs in 05 and lost. 06, they did not make the playoffs. 2007, they won the PCL title again. How many times were you actually part of those playoff teams out of those 5 years?
All of them.
All of them.
03, I got called up to Sacramento the last month, like August, early August. And so I was there for the final month of the season in the playoffs in 03. And then all of 04, was there the whole way. All of 05, I got called up a bunch, a few times in 05, so I wasn't there all season, but I was there for the run and everything. All of 06, I was up and down a bunch. All of 07, I was there for all of it. All the runs they made in the playoffs, I was a part of it.
I feel like that was a unique time in which, first of all, minor league teams don't usually win on a regular basis like that. And because Sacramento had this new team in this new ballpark, from a distance, it felt like there was more of a kinship between the fans and the players and the team involving winning than you normally get in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Am I right? In how can you explain what that time period was like?
I remember like the front office people at Sacramento and guys that were around the team for a while saying that Sacramento really felt like they were ready for a major league club. Like they had the Sacramento Kings there, and so they were a big city in that regard. They already had a major sport that was playing there, and they acted as though the River Cats were their big league club. It was almost like there was a chip on the Sacramento shoulder, like, well, we are a good baseball city. Look, look how good our team is, and look how much we support them. But guys, man, they sold out almost every night. There was 8,000 to 10,000 every. It was so much fun, the vibe there, and the front office did great there to ride the momentum of the crowd's involvement. It really was fun. It was a great time there, and it was like they really were showing that they were a major league city.
Okay, so honestly, come September, it's frequent that guys in the minor leagues are like, you know what? If I don't get called up to the major leagues, I'm done. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
How much did you guys really care about winning in the playoffs?
It was like that's a great question. When the game started, you cared.
Okay.
Every other point of the day, you could not despise it more.
Okay.
It was terrible. I mean, you get paid the same hourly wage or the daily rate, so your paychecks just continue. There's no playoff bonuses for minor league playoffs, and so there's no financial incentive other than maybe get another half a paycheck, and you see all your buddies going home, and you're wiped out, and you're tired, and you're like, I missed my opportunity in the big leagues. And there's still part of you that kind of is holding out hope that once the minor league playoffs end, that the big league club will come to their senses and call you up, or maybe whatever. They didn't call you up before the playoffs because they needed to field a team for the playoffs in the minor leagues, and so you're still there's a little bit of you that's holding out hope that there's still a shot for you, Plus, once the game starts, the competitive nature begins, and here we go. Let's do good. And so, the 1 year, what was it? 07 was it? Where we won the whole thing in Sacramento. That was fun. Like, there was a bunch of guys that were hoping to get called up that didn't get called up, and we kind of saw it coming. And I was one of those guys. I didn't go back up in September at the end of 2007, and there was a bunch of guys just like me that weren't going anywhere. And so we kind of owned it, and we were like, let's go for it. Let's win this whole thing, And so we dogpiled in a way that year, in a way that we never did in previous. Other ones, it was like we ran the field, we acted like we were happy, and then we just did a normal high-five lineup like it was a regular game in July, and then we went back and packed our bags and went home. But 07 was probably the 1 year. We had Jeremy Brown there, and a bunch of fun guys. That Keith Ginter, I think, was there. It was a fun year. That was the 1 year that I remember having the most fun in the playoffs.
Because I remember, as someone who was covering the Major League A's at this time, I covered the Major League A's 2004, 5, and 6. I remember Billy Beane always said, the most important thing to me every day is that the Oakland A's win, and the second most important thing to me is that the Sacramento River Cats win. Was that communicated to the AAA team as much as he communicated that to the press?
Not directly, but you could tell by how many minor league veterans they signed and put in Sacramento. It was widely known in the A's organization from the minor leaguers themselves that it's hard to crack AAA with the A's. It just can be, because they stack the team with a bunch of minor league veterans that have been around a long time, and they're not afraid to pay them. Mm-hmm. Like the big league club, they pinch pennies because of their market. But what's funny is that it seemed like they splurged on the AAA team, because of course minor league splurging is different than major league splurging, and you can do it and stack the team with some minor league veterans that are big league ready in case they're needed, but also add value to the AAA club that reflects in the wins.
But they were also a team that I remember Jack Cust and Matt Stairs and other guys they're putting up 30 homers, 100 RBIs every year, and no one will give them a chance. And the A's would say, we're going to give you a chance. Yeah. And those guys did get a chance. I don't know if Stairs or Cust would have ever made the majors if it wasn't for the A's.
A's were a unique opportunity. They really were. I mean, I'm not sure how I think a lot about what my career would look like if it was with any other club. I mean, they were progressive and cutting edge in 2001, 2002 in a way that no other club was, And now, of course, with, sabermetrics and statistical data and such, analytics, everyone has learned from the A's. But back then, they didn't care what you looked like. They didn't care what you threw like. They didn't care how hard you threw. They didn't care about anything. They just cared about what your numbers look like. Can you get it done in the field? And that was unique. I mean, my brother was part of the Yankees organization. That's who he got drafted by, and he won 10, 12 games every year in AA with a 3 ERA and could not sniff AAA, just could not get it. I mean, and why? Because he was throwing 88, 89 miles an hour, If he was in the Oakland organization, he would have been in the big leagues 2-3 years prior, it was really unique, the timing that I was in professional baseball, that I was with the team that they didn't care. They didn't care what you looked like. They didn't care. I mean, of course, that factored in to their draft, how they handled the draft, and of course, there's a certain measure of athleticism that you need just to get into the door. But they were a unique team, and that they gave shots to guys that performed.
So the book Moneyball, not the movie, but the book Moneyball came out in 2003, I'm pretty sure, which meant that Michael Lewis was working on it in 2002 when you were at Visalia. How much did you and your teammates know that this fairly famous writer who mostly writes about Wall Street and stocks is working on a book about the A's?
We knew that was a thing. We knew it was coming, but mostly we knew that the guys that were getting drafted in that 2002 draft were a different era. We knew it was like a fundamental change. In fact, that I was part of the 2000 draft of Oakland, and the 2002 draft was the one where they fundamentally changed how they did the draft. And our draft, the 2000 draft class, were the ones that said our draft class was so bad that they had to restructure how they did drafting entirely 2 years later. Like, we were that piss poor of a draft that they had to change everything about the draft and how they do things. So we knew of Nick Swisher. We knew.
But also Jeremy Brown, John Baker.
All those guys. And what made them unique was that Oakland immediately, not right out of the draft, but really quickly put them from short season up to high A, which was a big jump. It is a big jump. And even now, if someone's going to jump out of rookie ball to a higher level, they go to low A. But we didn't have a low A. And so they were making this massive jump almost directly from the draft up to the Cal League, which rubbed all of us other teammates wrong. Like, bro, I'd grind it out for 2 years before I can get to this level, And so those guys had an advantage with the draft that they were in, but they certainly didn't have an advantage with all the other guys that didn't have that same advantage, And so, just socially and personally, And so we gave them a hard time when they first got there. Like, I wish I was in a book, bro. They would stick me in AA by now, And so, but those guys were the real. They could play, You can tell it was a changing of the guard.
We started to talk about this off the air before we started recording this, about how you were a left-handed pitcher who didn't dominate left-handers and you didn't throw really hard.
Yeah. Do
you think that because the A's were so progressive at that time that gave you a better chance to stick around in the organization?
I think so. I wasn't a lefty specialist. I wasn't used as a lefty specialist. In fact, when I was in Single A, they didn't have a 5-man rotation. They had, what was it called? It was an 8-man.
Oh, and is that when they doing that piggyback thing?
Yeah, 8-man piggyback, where there was 2 guys that split a game, and they had a 4-man rotation for that. And so that's 8 guys that that was the rotation.
And so they would throw like 60 to 70 pitches instead of 90 to 100?
Exactly. And so one guy would throw 4 innings, go and pitch into the 5th, and the other guy would come in, throw the end. And I was one of the lucky guys, the lucky 3 guys that was on the pitching staff that was not part of the piggyback rotation. And so I was just a back-end bullpen guy that maybe threw 1/3 of an inning in the 5th inning just to connect the 2 piggyback guys, Tandem starters, that's what they call it, tandem. And so right off the bat, it was a different kind of organization. It wasn't what you would normally think. And so there was some opportunities to get in there that I think that was just unique to the organization. And so by the time my first full season was coming to a close, they had abandoned the tandem rotation idea and they went to a 5-man, and I was one of the main bullpen guys. That was, you're just trying to survive the season, and they're giving me opportunities. I honestly don't think that I would have had that as many with any other organization.
Well, speaking of surviving the season, let's talk about surviving the Pacific Coast League. We are recording this from the new ballpark in the master-planned community of Summerlin, Nevada. What are your memories of Cashman Field?
Oh, I remember standing out there during batting practice when it was 115 degrees at 4 p.m., the hottest point of day, 4 p.m. for batting practice, and the ball just flying out, the wind howling out to left field, and all the guys in the bullpen mysteriously came down with sore shoulders right before the game and just could not pitch for the next 4 days exactly while they were in Vegas. It was a brutal place to pitch in, the thin air and the wind blowing out and the dry air makes it a little bit more difficult for the ball to move and cut and curve the way that you want it to. And so hitters loved it. They loved playing there. But Cashman, it wasn't in the best side of town. It wasn't the funnest road trip, and then we stayed in the Golden Nugget, which smelled still like Dean Martin's ashtray. It was that kind of vibe, and so it was like, yeah, it's Vegas, but nah, not the fun Vegas, and then it's baseball in Vegas, but it's not that great. And the visitors' bullpen was right next to the beer garden that was on the field level. And if you were unfortunate enough to be there on Thirsty Thursday, just pack a lunch because they're going to be in your ear. Those Vegas, those Vegas 22-year-olds who had a ball sitting right behind our bullpen. So that was pretty fun too. This field here, I
was about to say, does this make you jealous when I tell you that we're staying across the street at the Red Rock Casino?
Are they really staying at the Red Rock?
Yeah, we stay at the Red Rock. Yeah, I just walked across the street to get here.
Oh my gosh!
And then this amazing facility. It better be. They spent $150 million on it, but this amazing facility with a pool in right center. And right next to where the Golden Knights practice facility is.
I couldn't imagine as good of a road trip in baseball with knowing that they're staying at the Red Rock, and you got downtown Summerlin just right here with all these great shops and shopping and restaurants, and you walk to the ballpark.
Everyone's wife and girlfriend is on the trip. Yeah. Right? Because they all want to come here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, most of the time they wanted to come just because it's Las Vegas, but Golden Nugget and downtown, but now, like, everyone's wives and girlfriends wants to come on this trip now.
I don't blame them, man. Honestly, downtown Summerlin is like my wife and I's like weekend date spot. Every weekend we end up, let's make our way down. There's a couple coffee shops that we love and a couple of restaurants. Like, that's where we go right now on our spare time for fun, and to have them like actually stay in there. What an upgrade, man. What a massive upgrade from what was before.
Yeah, I always say that the worst trade that ever happened, people always talk about like baseball trades, but I say no, the worst trade that ever happened is that the Pacific Coast League used to have a team in Hawaii, and that got moved to Colorado Springs. So that's the worst trade in baseball history. But the best trade in baseball history, at least minor league history, might be Cashman Field to Las Vegas Ballpark and the Golden Nugget to the Red Rock Casino.
Unbelievable, man. Part of me is really, really jealous of all the punks that get to stay at the Red Rock Hotel, but also at the same time, like, all right, much better than what we had before. So good for you guys.
Let me talk about some other ballparks that no longer exist. When you went back to Rosenblatt Stadium in Omaha as a professional baseball pitcher, what memories did that trigger from the College World Series experience?
Oh, a bunch. I remember, dogpiling my freshman year. I was on that travel squad. I didn't pitch much, like I said, but I was on the bottom of the dog pile for that. That was as fun as it can get. And
was that the year that the final was like 21-14 against ASU?
21-14. We lost our first game against LSU, and then we battled all the way through the losers bracket, beat LSU twice to get to the final. It was a great team, and got to the end, and the wind, of course, was howling out, and it's a Pacific Coast League ballpark, so the ball's going to fly. It's just like, that's a prerequisite to be.
I think they also changed the rules for bats as a result of that year.
Yeah, they were using lightsabers back then, and it was like the third baseman's going to get his head knocked off at some point, and so they got to do something, And so it did. There was a lot of talk of the need to change aluminum bats, and I think that not so fortuitous final score of 21-14. It's looking like it literally was a football score. Did seem to be the final linchpin for them to make some definitive moves on the bats.
Yeah.
So, but that was probably the biggest remembrance. And then the other one was, my junior year when we went back to the College World Series again. So I went my freshman year and then junior year. By my junior year, I was one of the main pitchers on the team. I was their closer, and my last college game was getting giving up a walk-off single to Florida State to lose the game. I still have the tape and seeing me walk off the field with my head down, and the College World Series was so much fun. Like, it really was. It was college baseball was probably besides the big leagues was the funnest baseball that you can get. Mm-hmm. Major college baseball. Where 95% of the guys on the team don't have any realistic expectations of getting drafted or going to the big leagues. This is the big leagues for them, and it's the same team all year, and the parents get involved, and it's like a family, and you're just trying your best to get as far as you can. USC was about as fun of a college experience as I think you could get. It was really awesome.
How often would all the famous USC alums come back? Would they do that for baseball the way they do for football?
Yeah, they do. A Hall of Fame game every year, where all the guys come back. There's guys that come back from years ago that come every year, and USC has a really storied tradition, that goes back a long way, and so it's usually it's a pretty well attended alumni game, so it's good stuff. But Rosenblatt it's a different experience when you're in AAA than when you are, because for one, there's probably 25 people in the stands as opposed to 25,000, when you're in college, and so. It's always a little depressing when you see this massive stadium, this beautifully massive stadium, and nobody's there. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you'd rather play in a small ballpark that's just kind of
Which is what they did. So they moved 22 miles west to Papillion for that exact reason. They moved there in 2011, and Rosenblatt got torn down. Right. It's now the parking lot for the zoo, and they built I call it the new Rosenblatt. Its official name is TD Ameritrade.
TD Ameritrade, that's right.
Yeah, and so the minor league team, basically, they got tired of... So even though they were there more often, they were the second-class citizens because it was all about the College World Series.
Yep.
And so they moved 22 miles west in order to have a ballpark that basically sits 10,000.
Wait, so the TD Ameritrade, how often does that get used? Is it just once a year?
I think the University of, Creighton.
Creighton, that's
Creighton uses it for like a weekend conference games, but probably doesn't use it for the Tuesday midweek game.
Wow.
And then I don't know what other events that they use, but it can't get used very often.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Good for them. Mm-hmm. Good for the minor leaguers, because it is kind of depressing, to play into.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big the crowd is. It's going to be.
Plus, the Omaha Royals would have to leave on a 2-week road trip. And so that was always the reason. This is what I've been told. So I was not in the PCL then, but I've always been told, the reason why the schedule is so weird in the PCL is because the College World Series in Omaha has to leave for 2 weeks, and that messes up everybody.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore, but the schedule's still really weird.
It's a good scapegoat, though. That's probably why it took them so long to make the change. They liked having the Omaha Royals to blame for all the problems. That's so funny.
Let me ask you about our mutual friend Johnny Doskow.
Okay.
He is the one who let me know what you're doing with your life these days.
Yeah.
And I recorded a podcast with him a couple of months ago. And
I listened to it.
Oh,
yeah,
you did?
I did.
Okay, so as you know, we spent most of it talking about the different pranks that he has pulled or that have been pulled on him.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of a really good prank involving Johnny Doskow that you were involved in or witnessed or anything like that?
He loved airport antics. It was always something at the airport. And it made a lot of sense because during game days, the guys are busy and they're doing their thing, But so whenever we were at the airport, he was the master he called it RP, role-playing. Mm-hmm. He's got a nickname for everything, And so he would role-play, and there was one that he loved to play it up that for some reason that we were all in the microchip industry.
Okay.
He loved that story. And so we would just start talking to each other. It was him, me, and maybe a handful of others that were really good at just kind of playing along. Dan Meyer was one of them. Sean Cohn was pretty good.
I'm going to interrupt you. If someone was bad at role play, would you kick him out and say, no, you can't do this anymore?
Heck yeah, you don't know how to RP, bro. You're brutal. Beat it. And then we would just kind of move on and do something else. But so Johnny would just start talking out of the blue. We'd be standing next to somebody in line, and he would just start loudly saying, he's like, bro, listen, Bill McCormick in accounting is everything that is wrong with the microchip industry, and here's why. And he would just run through, he would just make it up. And we'd have to play along. We couldn't laugh or snicker, and we'd be like, yeah, the way Dan Meyer would jump in and say, yeah, the way he treated Nancy, it was not okay. That was really not, and I would jump in. I think Bill is on the cutting edge of the microchip industry. He gets it. He really does. And so he trained us in how to just start talking as though we knew we were talking about, And so that can go on for 20 minutes. We would just be talking about the microchip industry that was just non-existent, and Johnny was the best at that. Yeah, I know. This was every road trip, man. And this is all at 6 in the morning because you got to leave early,
Yep.
Everyone's tired, wiped out, and all of a sudden, here comes Johnny.
It's time to RP.
It's time to RP.
How did you find out you were going to the major leagues for the first time?
In Sacramento, in June. I remember it. There was a game in Sacramento. It was really, really cold and windy that day, and most of the wives went home, except for my wife, and stayed with our two kids at the time. And it was a game that I thought I should have pitched in, knowing how the game went. We had a 1-run lead in the 8th, and it was there were some lefties coming up in the bottom of the 8th, or top of the 8th, and it was this is my inning. It should be me. I didn't pitch, and I was kind of perturbed. Why didn't I pitch there? It seems like it was pretty obvious. It was my turn. We get into the club, but we actually won, and we were in the middle of a long winning streak. We won 6-7 games in a row. So we high five after the game. We go into the clubhouse, and Tony D. Francesco, he says, "Hey, team meeting after the game." And we're all like, "You don't do that in the middle of a 7-game winning streak. It's 11 o'clock. We want to go home, and it's cold and windy. Let us out of here." Everyone's like, "What? A team meeting?" And he calls his team meeting, and he says, "You know what? Hey, we got this winning streak going. Things are going well, but I still feel like we're not concentrating as much as we should be. Hey, who's the team captain? Who's the team captain?" And just as a joke, earlier in the year, they had said that I was the team captain. I'd been there, how many years in a row? The
mayor of Sacramento?
Mayor by then, And the whole point of the team captain was to monitor and regulate whether guys were playing cards and dominoes too close to game time. And so the team captain was the killjoy that came, "All right, that's enough, everyone, let's go play," And so I was the team captain. So he's like, so here we are in mid-June, and he says, "Okay, we're still not concentrating enough. Who's the team captain?" And I'm like, I raise my hand, are you talking about me? And he's like, "Yeah, Flores, you know what? Guys are still playing cards. They're not concentrating. There's not enough concentration taking place. You know what? We're getting rid of you. We're sending your act to Oakland." And the place like had this for a while, everyone was stunned that he was even saying any of this. Like, what is going on? How is he? We're winning. What's the problem? And why would you blame the pseudo team captain for a lack of concentration? And so they were stunned that was taking place. And, like a brilliant acting job by Tony D. He really did. Like, and this isn't common. Normally they call a guy into the manager's office and says, "Hey, you got to go in the big leagues. We'll see you tomorrow." Whatever, you know. But he did this whole spiel.
He RG'd.
He RP'd.
Or RP'd.
RP'd.
He RP'd.
He goes, "Flores, we're sending your act up to Oakland." And everyone paused for a second, and then I just remember the whole place erupted. Oh my gosh, you know, and I was like in tears, and I'm hugging guys, and I was like a blur, you know. And then I remember I was leaving the next morning, and I had to pay the clubhouse guy my clubhouse dues. I mean, it was, you pay at the end of a homestand, you know, and we were in the middle of a homestand, and so I didn't bring my checkbook, and I wasn't ready to pay the guy for the 4 days or so that I was there. So I called my wife, and I thought she was home by now. I thought because it was cold, and I thought all the wives went home. And so I called her like, "Hey, sweetie, do you have the checkbook?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Oh, wait, are you here? Are you at the apartment?" She's like, "No, I'm here." I'm like, "Oh, do you have the checkbook? Great." And she's like, she knew. Wait, that either means you only pay to use the checkbook at the end of the homestand, and the only time you would use it in the middle of it is if you either got released and you were going home, or you were getting sent down, or you were getting sent up. And so I'm saying, "Babe, I need the checkbook." And she's like, "What?" "Yeah, babe, could you have the checkbook? Can you run it? Can you pull it out of the car?" And she's like, "You tell me right now, Ronald Flores, what is going on?" I'm like, "Babe, I'm going up. What?" I'm like, "Where are you?" She's like, "I'm in the players' parking lot." And so I hung up and I ran outside, and I remember opening the clubhouse door, and the players' parking lot was up a grassy hill berm from the players' door, you know, in the clubhouse. And she gets out of the car, and the kids are in the car, and it's cold and windy, and I'm like, she's like, "Are you serious?" And I go, "Babe, I'm going up." And I'm running up the hill to go give her a hug, and she's running down, and she was charging at me like a rhino, and I was like, she jumped at me, and I'm thinking, "Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. This would be the dumbest injury of all time. Wait till you're on the active roster before you get hurt." And she jumped at me, and we rolled, and we kissed, and we hugged, and we cried, and our kids were looking out the door like, "What is going on?
What's wrong with mom and dad?"
Yeah, and it was euphoric. It really was.
And then who do you call? Do you call your brother or your parents first?
Who did I call first? I think I called my dad and mom. I left a message with my brother. He was in the East Coast playing, you know, someplace, and so it was really late, and he didn't call me till the next day. But yeah, all the phone calls, and I remember my whole family and a bunch of friends that were now living in Vegas by now, came out to Oakland the next day to come. And I actually pitched that first night in the Coliseum against the Phillies.
And not only did you pitch against the Phillies, you're facing Jim Thome, and I understand that you had a Jim Thome baseball card back at home.
I did. It was the weirdest, man. It was so bizarre. I knew that the bullpen coach said, "Hey, you got left, right, left coming up," or left, right, right, left, something like that. I'm like, "Okay, great. First guy's lefty. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do." And then I'm warming up thinking, I don't even want to look in the on-deck circle. Don't even look, because you're going to get in your own head. And then I peeked. Oh, my gosh. You've got to be kidding me. The Hall of Famer, 500 home run guy, you know. Well, the crazy part about that was that before, when I was warming up, I had kind of an interaction with Ricardo Rincon. Remember the Mexican lefty there?
Yeah.
When I first got into the big league clubhouse earlier that day, I mean, I got there early, like at noon, you know, when the stretch isn't until 4. I was there early. I wanted to make sure I was settled and, you know, got my uniform and everything like that. I get there early, and I'm trying on my uniform with Voos. Remember Voos, the clubhouse guy?
Yeah.
And I'm trying on the jersey, and Rincon walks in. He's there early, too, to get treatment on his shoulder or something, you know, and he sees my jersey say Flores on it, you know, and so he assumes that I speak Spanish, which I don't know a word of it. I took 3 years of it in high school, 3 years of it in college. I'm half Mexican. I still don't know a word of it, you know. And he comes by and he's like, "Hey, Flores," you know. And I had learned in my minor league life that there was certain phrases you can use in Spanish to kind of give the impression that you do know Spanish, but you really don't at all. And you're around so many Dominicans and Venezuelans and Mexicans. Like they all thought, and it was like the biggest insult to them that I was a coconut, you know, that I was brown on the outside but white on the inside, you know, that I didn't know the language. And so I had learned words like phrases, like one of the phrases that I learned was suave. Suave, bro. Like, hey, suave. That could mean, that's universal. It can mean anything. It can mean, like, take it easy, or, hell, chill out. I got this, or calm down, or all is good, or whatever. Suave, suave. And it can be used. So I see Rincon walks by me. Hey, Flores, he says something. I go, oh, suave. And apparently the context was a little bit like it sounded kind of snarky because he was like, oh, okay, Flores, and he walks away. So, and he thinks that I speak Spanish. So now that night, I'm warming up to get into the game. They tell me, okay, Flores, you got the 7th inning, whatever. I'm warming up, and I'm scared as can be. You can't, you barely feel your legs, and you're just trying not to bounce the ball. And I'm warming up, and I go over to get a cup of water right before I'm going into the game. The inning's over. Flores, you got it. And I'm like, my hand's shaking as I'm getting the cup of Gatorade before I go in. And Rincon walks over, and he throws his arm over me. And he proceeds to give me what I would imagine would be the greatest Spanish pep talk that has ever been given to another non-Spanish speaking pitcher ever in history. Because he was passionate, and he was demonstrative with his hands. And I picked out a few words like agresivo, concentration. And I could pick up that it was a good thing, that he was trying to really pump me up. Uh-huh. And he gets to the end of this like a good 90-second pep talk, and I got to get out of there. I got to go. And he's like, and he gets to the end of it. He's like, okay. And he's looking at me like to respond, to like say like, muchas gracias or something. But I couldn't think of anything to say. And I just looked at him like, all right, bro, let's go get him. And he gave me a look like, it was like this cocktail of anger and confusion and betrayal. He was like, looked at me like, you little faker. You don't know Spanish at all. You're a pocho. You know what I'm saying? And so I turned around, and he gave me that look like, you've got to be kidding me, and walked away. And I jogged into my Major League debut thinking Ricardo Rincon wants to kill me after the game. And so in a funny way, it kind of like distracted me from like the gravity of what was taking place here, And so I warmed up thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. Rincon's going to kill me. Oh my gosh, there's Jim Thome. Like, I didn't have time to even really think about it, and then faced Thome, and I just Kendall called a first pitch slider, and I remember thinking, don't make your first pitch in the big leagues be a hanging slider on Jim Thome's back. Don't hit him. Sometimes I did that when I'm nervous. I would let up on breaking balls, and it would just spin, and it would hit the lefty in the back or in the whatever. And I was like, so I spiked it. It was straight into the ground. And the next pitch was a high fastball for 2-0, and I'm like, am I going to be the guy that throws 8 straight balls and gets taken out of his Major League debut? This would be totally embarrassing. That's literally going in my head. And then I threw a fastball down the middle, and he was right on it, but he tapped it foul. And then a 2-1 slider that he took for a strike, a good pitch. And then I just cranked a couple of sliders in a row. He fouled one off, and then finally he swung and missed. And I honestly, the funny part about that was that, throughout my professional career, whenever I would strike a guy out, I would just turn around and start walking around the mound because the catcher's going to throw it to the third baseman to throw it around, Mm-hmm. And so I struck out Thome, and I was pumped, and I quickly whipped my body around to like walk around the mound, and I hear like the ball whiz by my left ear. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, did they not throw the ball around in the big leagues? Is he mad that I turned my back? Is Kendall mad? Because Kendall he was a hardcore dude.
Yes, he was.
And you don't mess with Kendall, And all these thoughts are going through my head. Oh my gosh, now Kendall wants to kill me too. He's trying to kill me with the ball, but it was actually, he was throwing it to Chavez, the third baseman, but he was playing way over because of the shift. And so it was a tumultuous first 10-minute outing,
When did you start breathing normally again?
Once I knew that I was done in that game, I came out, and I think I struck him out, and the next guy got a pop-up base hit, and then I think Chase Utley hit a ground ball to first baseman, and we got the lead out, and the next guy popped up in the first pitch. And so I came out, and then Maka came over and said, okay, that's it. We got someone else coming in. And it was like, all right, it's like I can relax, And I remember it was Dan Herron, who was actually really good buddies with my brother Randy, and when he was in the St. Louis organization, and he came over, and he was a buddy of mine, and he was like, how you feeling? You doing all right? And I'm like, bro, I can't even feel my legs. Like, that was insane. And he was like, I know, man, you did good. Way to go. And it was like oh, my gosh. And then to know that I had a bunch of family waiting outside, and my phone had a bunch of texts and calls and stuff, it was like, it feels like I can retire right now. And, like, I did it.
Yeah.
Like, it was this sense of vindication and validation for the years that I put into it. It was so much fun.
You had a quote once to the great Melissa Lockhart.
Yeah.
And you said, when you have a wife and 2 kids, if you stay in minor league baseball for 5 to 6 years and don't make it, you're kind of an idiot. Yeah. But when you do make it, you are praised for sticking with it.
It's true, man. I stand by it. I stand by it. Not in the sense of you're dumb if you play minor league baseball and you don't make it, but it's when you have, dependents, when you have mouths to feed, and you're making $1,000, $1,500 a month trying to chase a pipe dream. And you never make it when you could have spent all that time climbing up the corporate ladder or joining.
You were an economics major.
Right.
You went to USC.
It felt like I could have been using that time better, And what was weird was that to think whether or not this was a good decision to stick it out or whether it was a horrible decision was not in my control. It was in someone else's control whether I was going to get called up or not. It's a weird place to be in, to know that 10 years of your life would be validated or not based off of somebody else's decision, And so that's kind of where that quote came from. Like if you stick around this long, you don't make it. You're like, wow, you're dumb. You should have gone back to school, or you should have started climbing the corporate ladder. But that actually, if you get called up, you're such a perseverer. Mm-hmm. You really stuck it out, And so it was awesome to be able to know that, okay, no matter what happens, I actually accomplished my goal.
Did Billy Beane or David Forrest ever kind of give you some sort of like, hey, congratulations, welcome, or anything that kind of sticks out when you first got called up?
No, it's not really. I don't remember anything specifically from them. I do remember the following offseason after 2005. I had a pretty good, 10 outings or so in 2005 in the big leagues. That following offseason, I'm just following everything I could possibly find on Oakland news, like who's going to stay, who's going to go, what's Rincon doing, what's going to happen. And I remember specifically reading an article that they were interviewing Billy Beane about the future of the 2006 team, and him saying in regards to they had just lost Rincon. Rincon went someplace else, and they asked Billy what the plan was for the left-handed relief in the big league bullpen. And Billy saying, we really would like to give someone like Ron Flores the chance to be the long-term solution for that. That was like the pinnacle of my off-season life at that point, was that Billy really does want to give me a chance, and he thinks highly enough of me to give me a shot. So it was a fun season to know that.
So I had 2 stories that I was trying to rack my brain about, just like other fun tidbits that I remember from when you were in the major leagues and I was covering the A's. Yeah. And one of them dovetailed into what you were just saying. And I might get the story wrong, but I remember at some point it was just kind of chit-chat in a clubhouse. It wasn't for a story where I said, is there always one guy in the AAA team where if someone gets hurt, if someone gets traded, they always know first that someone's going to get called up? And I'm pretty sure that you said, yeah, that's me.
Oh, yeah. I was the transactions guy. It was the guy that checks the transactions in the newspaper. That was because back then that's what you had. That's all you had was just the newspaper article that said the transactions. And so they called him the transaction guy, and that was me. I had all the alerts up. I knew the websites. I knew the different the forums, the chat rooms that talked about this stuff. And so I was Johnny on the spot with that stuff.
Okay.
Especially in 2006 when I think I was up and down 5 or 6 different times in the 1 year. And so not only was I checking the transactions when I was in the minor leagues, but I was also checking them when I was in the big leagues, trying to see what was going. How long am I going to last?
Mm-hmm.
Is there another move that's coming where I'm the 26th guy and I'm going to go? And so there's a bit of a control freak in me that just wants to know, I want what's coming my way rather than just, winging it every day. I was really the guy that wanted to keep a handle on what was happening,
The other story that I remember was, this would have been 2000, it was either 2005 or 2006. I think it was 2005. And it's the All-Star break. Yeah, it is 2005. I remember it's the last day of the All-Star break, and it is a optional workout at the Coliseum. And I remember I did not plan in advance, so I did not have a story for the first day coming out of the All-Star break. So I'm kind of panicked. I'm like, I don't have a story. I don't have any quotes. I don't know what I'm going to write. So I show up at the Coliseum. I have no idea who's going to be there, and maybe I can find some story. And as it turned out, I lucked into – I didn't find this out way in advance. I basically knew an hour before it got announced that Eric Burns had been traded.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, you were there too. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was the only time, even to this day, where I think that where I was around somebody within 5 minutes or so of them being informed that they had been traded.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you said to Burns, but I remember that Burns he wasn't mad, he wasn't excited, it was almost like he was just stunned. And there'd been a lot of rumors about whether or not Burns was going to be traded for a couple of years. And I'm wondering, number one, if you remember that and just sort of like that transaction business side of baseball and what's that's like when someone gets traded, that rawness.
I don't remember specifically what I said to Burns. He was a good dude. He is a good dude. And he was beloved in that clubhouse. He was like the heart and soul of that team. And so it really was, even from the rest of us who was like, what? If there's one guy you don't get rid of Burnsy. I don't know what his contract situation was or what obviously they're going to make the right move financially. But there is that you do feel like you kind of have to take on, like you're just a robot. Like you really have to detach yourself emotionally, because if you ride the wave of feeling like you're a part of that family, you'll feel like a piece of junk that's just thrown to the curb when it really is a business. Like you really do have to detach yourself emotionally so you don't get stepped on. Your heart will just hurt too much, and so, but you're still a person though, and so it still stings, especially when you feel like as though you're beloved at a certain place and this is home to you and you bought a house there and your kids are in school and they love it, and it's like,
and Burns grew up in the Bay Area, right?
That stung a lot, and I couldn't imagine what it was like for him, and I would imagine that he to put a protective layer around his heart the rest of his career, like to not get so devastated again. So Burnsy was a good dude. He really is.
I mean, even just from a transaction standpoint, I'm going back and I'm looking at the numbers that you put up in your limited opportunities in the major leagues. But then I also went back and I looked at the starters were. The starters back then threw 1,000 innings between Hudson, Mulder, and Zito, and then Heron and Blanton and Harden. And I'm going back and I'm looking at it and I'm like, they barely needed their bullpen.
Right.
So nowadays, most teams use 13 pitchers. Back then, the A's would use 12, sometimes 11.
Yep.
And their starters went so deep into the game, they didn't really need a bullpen as much.
Right.
And teams did not, at least the A's then, did not manipulate their roster, constantly moving guys around the way that teams do nowadays.
Yeah.
And so I feel like nowadays you may have not gotten that same opportunity because all they care about is how hard you throw.
Yeah.
But it made it harder for you to kind of like be needed because their starters went 7-8 innings almost every night.
I mean, Joe Blanton was their number 4 guy, and he averaged pitching into the 8th inning every game, like as their 4th starter. And so there was no game where it was like, oh, all right, here we go, we're gonna get in there in the 4th or 5th inning. It was you take your. I mean, I remember there was one. I remember laughing with guys that when I was in the big leagues, I was there for in 06. I was there for. There was one particular stretch I was there for like 2.5 months straight. It was my longest stretch consecutively in the big leagues, and there was one. Part of that time there, it was an entire pay period from the 1st to the 15th that I didn't pitch in a game at all. I got an entire paycheck and I didn't work at all. And I remember getting a paycheck and I'm like, bro, I didn't pitch. They're like, bro, you just stole from the A's organization. like that's how like good the team was. Plus, I was the last guy in the bullpen. It was if I wasn't needed, I wasn't needed. So that's how good they were. You can go a whole pay cycle and not even get in the game.
But you were needed on June 30th, 2006, a day game in San Diego that ends up going 14 innings.
Yeah. And
you pitched 4 scoreless innings to get your first major league win.
My one and only. That was it. That's one to remember. And, the funny part about that one was that the day before, I had pitched 2 innings in San Diego. And I think it was the day before that my dad had called. He was in Vegas here, pastoring a church here in Vegas. And he called me the day before we went to San Diego and says, hey, Ron, I'm thinking of going down to San Diego and see if I can, catch a game. And I'm like, Dad, great, come on down. It's a 6-hour drive or so from Vegas, 5-6 hours. But, Dad, it's probably a good chance I'm not going to pitch. Again, I hadn't thrown in a whole pay cycle once, And so he's like, no, I just want to come and we'll go to dinner afterwards. Well, that night he got to the game, and that night I actually pitched. I pitched 2 innings. I did pretty good. 2 innings. I gave up a solo home run to Piazza, one of the hardest hit balls, I think, in the history of mankind. But that was it. It was the 2 innings that were pretty clean. And afterwards we went to dinner, and my dad, how do you do it, Dad? Like, you show up to 1 game and I get 2 innings. And he's like, yeah, well, me and God, it's all good, And so afterwards it's like midnight, 12:30 at night, because we just had dinner after a night game. And he's like, man, I got a long drive and it's already midnight. And he's kind of giving me puppy dog eyes, like, what am I going to do? I'm like, Dad, come crash in my hotel room. Come crash. And the next day was the last game of the road trip, so it's a getaway day. It's a 1:00 game. And so we got to be at the field early, like 8, rookies usually get there at 8:30 in the morning, And my dad, we go to my hotel room, and I go into the hallway to call my wife. I'm excited. I just pitched, I'm talking to her for a while, and I come back in, and my dad's asleep, and he was planning on leaving like at 6 a.m. to drive back. My family, is particularly all the guys, we all have deviated septums.
Okay.
You know where I'm going with this.
He snores.
All of us. So it's not just my dad, it's all of us. But so it's basically a rush to who's going to fall asleep first, because the other person's just not. And he was out. And I laid in bed staring at the ceiling from 12:30 until his alarm went off at 6:30 in the morning. No sleep at all. Bro, it was just not happening, You
didn't try to, roll him over, put a pillow on the side of his nose or anything?
He was out. And, I'm the same way. My wife, if I'm really tired or something, I'm sick or something, there's no stopping me. It sounds like trucks downshifting on the highway, like the la, it's like, like you don't think they're going to make it through the night, And so, of course, shaking, you get a little breather, and, of course, it comes back. And, bro, his alarm finally went off at, I think, 6:30 or 7 in the morning. He gets up quietly, gets his stuff, and leaves. I'm on no sleep. I sleep for an hour until my alarm goes off, and I got to get to the field. I put my suit on, walk down to the field, and, bro, I'm a mess. No sleep, and people are looking at me like, Flo, did you guys go to the bar last night? Your dad's a pastor, but did you guys tie one on because you had a good outing the other day? And I'm like, no, I didn't sleep, blah, blah, blah. They're like, whatever, So a bunch of Red Bulls and coffee just to try to survive the day. And I'm thinking, well, all is good. I pitched 2 innings yesterday. I'm not going to pitch today. Well, if that ain't the kiss of death,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the bullpen. The entire bullpen gets wore out by the 9th inning. It's just Houston Street in the bullpen and me. Street goes in there to pitch the 9th inning. All we have to do is have him close the game down, and the game's over. I'm scot-free. He, of course, gives up the lead. It's tie game, and we're going to the top of the 10th. The phone rings, and the bullpen coach picks up, and he's like, he knows what's going on. He knows what happened, and he's looking at me. He gives me that nod. You got it. And it's yours until it's over. Like, oh, my gosh. And I could just envision my dad's face driving back on the 15 freeway, laughing hysterically, and so it was in a funny way. When I got out into the field, I remember thinking, whatever happens. I'm on no sleep, so if it's bad, at least I have an excuse. I'm just going to air it out, whatever. And it kind of relaxed me a little bit, and I stayed within my game. I wasn't trying to overthrow or do anything too much. And guys just kept getting themselves out, Changeup was working. Everyone was trying to hit a home run because I remember it was really hot that day.
It was.
And everyone just wanted – it was a day game, and everyone wanted to go home. And I'm throwing good changeups, and they're popping them up. And I'm like, okay, 10th inning, 11th inning, 12th inning. I actually got an at-bat that game, my one and only professional at-bat. And it was against Alan Embry, the powered lefty reliever, in the 12th inning or so. I remember sitting in the dugout and having the ammonia ice towel hanging over me because it was so hot, and I'm like, someone just please end the game. But I knew that I still had to pitch the last inning. Even if we did score a bunch of runs, I got to pitch again, And so I'm trying to cool off, and someone comes over to me. He's like, Flores, you're in the hole. You're batting this inning. What? That's a thing? We're the American League, And they're like, no, you're in the hole, bro. It's Swisher, and then it's Chavez, and then it's you. And Zito comes running over, and he's like, bro, do you have a bat? And I'm like, bro, I haven't owned a bat since high school. And he's like, okay, what kind of bat do you want? And I'm like, the smallest one you could find. And he's like, I got you. And Zito sprints up to get his bat. He had a small little pea shooter guy, and he comes back. He gives me his number 75 helmet and his batting gloves, and he gives me this little tiny bat, and he says, do your best, bro. I go out there. Swisher struck out on 3 pitches. Chavez goes out. He strikes out on 3 pitches. And so I come up, and I'm the third hitter. And I stand in the box, and I still know I got to pitch the next inning still, And so I dig in, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to pitch. I'm not going to swing at the first pitch. And Embry throws from the first base side of the rubber, and he throws across his body, and I'm a lefty swing. It felt like he was throwing it from behind my back, And he throws 98 miles an hour right down the middle, and I step in the bucket just to get out of the way, and it felt like it was a mile outside. And it was called a strike. It was down the middle. I saw the video. It was right down the middle. It felt like it was in the opposing batter's box, And so I go, okay, I got to try to put the ball in play here. And so I was like, I got to get my swing started really early. And so he throws this pitch, and my swing was so early that I was actually through the swing before the ball was even halfway to the plate. It was embarrassing, and I kind of tapped my feet like, that was dumb, And so it's 0-2 now, and he throws another pitch. And I'm thinking to myself, if he throws a breaking ball, he's the biggest wuss in baseball. Like, look at me, throw a fastball.
Right.
I'm just selling out that it's not going to be a breaking ball. And he throws another fastball, and I remember hitting it as late as you possibly can almost out of the catcher's glove, and I fouled it straight, down the third baseline, way foul, And I'm thinking, wow, okay, I was really early the first pitch, and then really late the second pitch. I think I'm on this. Like part of me was thinking, like, it was all coming back, like senior year in high school. Like, I can hit a line drive up the middle. I think I can, I think he's going to throw another fastball. And he better not throw a breaking ball. Here we go. And he threw another fastball. And, Josh, I was right on it, bro. It felt like I was going to hit a line drive up the middle. And I topped it, and it went straight down to the plate and bounced off the plate, went straight up super high. And I stood there and watched it, and the catcher grabbed it and tagged me out. And the umpire said, "You're out." And the whole stadium erupted in laughter. Like, you're a boat. Like, I don't know what I was doing. Like, and I'm dragging my bat back to the dugout, and I still got to go into the game to pitch. Like, it was actually later in Kangaroo Court, like a week or two later, Jason Kendall, he was the judge for Kangaroo Court. He gave me a $25 credit in Kangaroo Court because I put the ball in play and Swisher and Chavez didn't. So then I threw another inning and got out of that one. And then we scored a run or so, I think 1 or 2 runs the next inning, and they pulled Chad Godin. He had tennis shoes on. He was going to be one of the starters in a couple days, and they said, "Hey, you got to throw this last inning." And he luckily got out of that next inning, and I got my first major league win.
That's awesome.
Crazy day. It was so much fun.
That is fabulous.
Yeah,
that is fabulous. Okay, after you signed with the Cardinals, 2008.
Yep.
And your brother's still pitching for the Cardinals.
Yep, he was in the big leagues for the last few years there. Won a World Series.
So did you guys get to room together in spring training? Or what was spring training like?
Oh, spring training. What did we do? No, we were both married, and, I had kids, and so I found a little place in the same area as him, but we were together all the time in spring training, and then, when the season started, he was obviously in the big leagues, and I was in Memphis the whole year, and it was clear by the middle of the year that I wasn't in their plans. I wasn't going up, and so it was like, okay, let's just have a good season. My brother, he injured his ankle in the big leagues, like in late July, and so when he was rehabbing his ankle, he came to Memphis and was there for almost an entire month. He was there all of August.
Oh, wow!
And so both of us were in the Memphis bullpen together all of August 2008. We still talk about it to this day. Every now and then I'll text him and say, "Remember August 2008?" It was like, he's 4 years older than me, so we were never in high school together. We were never in college together. We were in different organizations. We were doing our own thing, and so there was never a time where we were on the same team ever, But that was the one time, August 2008. And baseball life where whoever in a team of 25, the handful of guys that have the most major league service time on that team, they kind of run the team. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that call the shots. Everyone defers to them. What's their opinion on things, how things should be run. The culture of the team is really decided by the veterans.
Yeah.
Well, I was one of those veterans in Memphis. I was one of the handful of guys that had some pretty significant, not a ton, but in AAA, I was one of the guys that had the most service time. And so I kind of was one of those like culture setting guys that were in charge. And me and a couple of buddies, we kind of did what we wanted. But then when Randy came, I was kind of like the team captain, like for the first 4 months of the year. When Randy came, I was like super captain. Like now I could do whatever I wanted. Now I got a 6-year major league veteran brother with me, and we're peas in a pod and goofy and silly. And so that whole month, it was probably the funnest.
Did you room together on the road, or would you have separate rooms?
No, we roomed together. We did everything. It was so much fun. We goofed off during games. The bullpen was just a madhouse. We were always clowning around. It was about as fun a month as I remember the big leagues the minor leagues ever being.
At the same time, when he first got hurt, did you think, "Oh, my brother got hurt. Maybe I can go to the major leagues now"?
Well, who did they have? They had Jaime Garcia at the time. And he was their hotshot prospect. He was good. He really was. And he ended up having a good, solid major league career. So they had him that was there. Who else did they have? They had another. Jaime Garcia was the one. It was clear if there was going to be a lefty that was needed, it was going to be him. So it was kind of, but it was like, no, it's going to be Jaime.
Yeah.
And so ideally it would have been fun for the both of us to be in the big leagues. Like that would be fun, mm-hmm. But the second best thing was that, So,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good run.
That's really cool.
I remember when I first got called up to the big leagues in Oakland, Randy was in the big leagues with the Cardinals. And so especially after your article that you had just read earlier about, and so I was showing it to my brother, and, my dad was showing it to him, and I remember Randy telling me the story that he was in the big league bullpen with the Cardinals, and he was just so excited. He was like, my brother's in the big leagues, and it was just, this article was cool that, that there's two brothers that are both, that both are both college grads, are both in the big leagues, both lefties. It's a really cool story. And he said that Jason Isringhausen, like the closer for the Cardinals, he's a funny dude. I knew him a bit later when I would play with the Cardinals a little bit. He said, Flores, it's not news that that there's two brothers in the big leagues. The biggest news is that two Mexicans went to college at all.
That sounds like Isringhausen.
That sounds like it. We laughed, and it was the best, But so I remember I think it was one of the writers for Cardinals said that me and Randy were the Grammatica brothers of the major leagues. Like the random brothers pitching in the random's position, trying to make a career out of it. Like that was me and Randy.
So 2009 ends up being the last year of your career, and you mentioned earlier you were with the Reds in spring training.
Spring training with the Cincinnati Reds,
and then you go to the Long Island Ducks of the Independent Atlantic League. Yep. When did you know this is it?
I think I knew before I even got to Long Island. I mean, I was in big leagues camp with the Cincinnati Reds, and it was actually my brother and a couple other people had convinced me, try dropping down, be a drop-down lefty.
Really?
Yeah. And so I goofed off with it towards the tail end of my time in Memphis, and then all off-season I went to winter ball and I tried it, and I went into spring training with the Reds as a sidearm lefty. And I've seen tape of myself. It was terrible. I was like a guy that was pretending to lean over, but then at the last second would come back up straight. And so when you really see the frame where I'm actually throwing from, it just looks like I'm slightly lower arm angle. I'm not even sure why. It's just a really dramatic lower arm angle. But I went into spring training and I was actually doing pretty good. I was funky and guys couldn't get a read on the ball, and I was throwing good. I was throwing okay. And I remember getting down to the very tail end of spring training. It was actually almost April. I think it was the end of March or early April. And there was 8 guys that were still in the bullpen, and they were going to keep 7, and I was one of them. And they called me the last day of spring training. They called me into the clubhouse. Dusty Baker was there, and Jockety was there. Mm-hmm. And they said, Flores, we're sorry. We tried to trade you. We know it's late in spring training, and there's not a whole lot of openings. There wasn't really any AAA team that can take you.
Were you out of options? They weren't going to send you to the...
Yeah, I burned them all with Oakland 3 years in a row. And so there was no space in Louisville. They tried to... Jockety knew Randy from the Cardinals, and he was trying to take care of me, and I had a good spring. And they're like, we're really sorry. We tried to figure out a place for you to go to AAA, but there's just no jobs right now. We're going to have to release you. And so we packed my wife and I and our 3 kids at the time packed our car and drove all the way back to Vegas. And I was hoping that there would be, just teams knocking down my door to get me there. And my agent was like, man, I can't even get you a AA job right now. It was like, I remember getting to a point where I was talking with my dad saying, how much longer do I just wait around? I was throwing baseballs against a fence here at a high school in Vegas just to try to keep my arm. All my baseball, the season's going, and deciding, okay, if I don't hear anything from anybody by May, I'm going to go play indie ball, and so. Once that date came, and it was like,
here we are. Here's that date.
Let's go play, and let me see if I can catch fire by throwing sidearm, and maybe something will happen. That's what you're hoping for, just to catch fire and catch a break. And it was, it was not, the writing was on the wall. It was over, and it was actually kind of helpful. Like my career didn't end with an injury. It didn't end with me being hosed by a coach or a new guy coming in and taking my spot. Like it was my descent out of baseball was very gradual, and so I knew it was coming. I brought my kids onto the field during batting practice. I went on road trips I didn't even care. I was like, this is it. It's over. Let's have some fun, And so, I remember reading someplace that 99% of professional athletes retire badly. Not everybody gets the Derek Jeter. Or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar farewell tour. What's the line? Everything ends badly, otherwise it wouldn't end. And so, but I was one of the fortunate 1%. I really was. That I knew that my time was up. I still had a whole season to enjoy myself, and I knew this was my last go. And so when I retired, it was like, yeah, it's time. My kids are my oldest son was in school age, and I think it's time. I think it's time for me to let this go.
It's amazing to me how many players I've talked to whose final year was in independent baseball.
Yeah.
And they say, like, how much just fun it was, and it made it easier for them to go out on their own terms because they weren't worried about things that they worried about when they were playing affiliated minor league ball.
So true, man. I mean, especially the Atlantic League and particularly Long Island, they really do their best to make it really professional. Long Island was fun. They had 5,000-6,000 people every night, and it was a fun clubhouse, and it was just a bunch of guys that were just kind of happy to be there and were, but at the same time cranky. It's a funny vibe, like cranky, happy guys, that were just glad to be putting on a uniform. And so it really was. It was a smooth transition, much more so than had I just quit after getting released by the Reds. It really was the 5 months that I needed to be able to say goodbye to the game. I mean, retiring from baseball, it's like they call it the first death in your life. It's like losing a family member, unless someone, of course, has died before that. But it does feel like it's the first death in your life where you have to move on. Your whole identity is wrapped up in I'm Ron Flores, the ball player. I'm Ron Flores, the guy with the changeup. I'm the guy that's got some big league time. That's who you are. And then when that is removed, it's like, who even am I? Like, I don't even know how to even relate to the world. So independent ball was really the saving grace to help me transition out of ball.
So in this Oakland Tribune article in 2005, written by some Sachin, Sakon, whoever, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
It also goes on to say that Flores knows he'll probably still need that real job one day. He majored in economics at USC and would love to be a broker down on the trading floor.
That was my goal. Yeah.
I also read an article where you said you thought about maybe being a pitching coach or getting into scouting. Your brother is the scouting director for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
You also had been a substitute teacher in between minor league seasons.
Yep.
And I'd read an article, you said you might become a teacher.
Yeah.
But you did not do any of those things.
None of those things.
What were the paths that led to you to this current life?
Well, substitute teaching was something that I did just because, it was something my brother did, and it was an easy $100 in California, and you're done by 3 p.m. and there's still daylight to play catch, They call it educated babysitting. That's what they call it, And so, and in that world for long enough where it was like, maybe, teaching is a formidable profession and I can be a baseball coach and it sounds kind of fun, and so that was kind of like the thought process. Well, when I'm done from baseball, that could be an option. And then you get into baseball and it's like, well, I kind of like to stick around baseball. Gosh, that sounds like really fun. I'll do anything, to stay in baseball. But then realizing especially towards the end of my career, that even every coach, even the major league coaches, those guys grind. It is a grind. It's like all of the negative side of the game with none of the good side, none of the glamour. Like there's none of the high pay, the TV time. We're all of us play a game and we eat a steak dinner in the clubhouse and then we leave, and all the coaches are just getting started. They got to input all the data, and they're there all night, and they got to be there the next day, and they got to play batting practice. So it was like, and those guys, they're here after 10 years of grinding this out in minor league ballparks. Like, do I love the game that much to leave my kids? Do I love it enough to do that? I'm not sure I want to do that. Then finding out that the front office is even worse. My brother works his tail off. He's actually assistant GM now of the Cardinals. He just got a recent promotion, and he loves his gig, and he's got a great family that supports him. And he's on the road a lot, and he's a road dog, and he works his tail off. It's not as glamorous as it might be made out to seem from the outside looking in. And so I retired at the end of 2009 thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. Teaching is like, is that what I want to do? I'm not sure if I'm thinking about it, and then baseball, it didn't look like I had any prospects for that, and I'm not even sure that I would want to, even if I had the opportunity. And it was right towards the end of my last season that my dad reached out and said, "Hey, there's an opening at the church that he has been pastoring there for the youth pastor. Hey, our youth pastor just stepped down, and he actually the previous youth pastor actually recommended you and your wife to take over." And I'm like, "Really? Maybe, I don't know, And he said, "Well, just do it for a year on a volunteer basis, and help us out." And I'm like, "All right, I can do it for a year, And I was thinking, I'll clean some things up in the youth group, and then I'll pass it on to the next guy. I told Portia, my wife, I said, we can do anything for a year. And she reminded me, Ron, we haven't done anything for a year, ever. Like, we've been on the road. We never stayed anywhere for longer than a couple of months. Like, what do you mean we can do anything for a year? And she was right. But we were already pot committed by then. And it was probably about 2-3 months into that year that we just fell in love with ministry, and we fell in love with the youth group. And it was like, this is what I feel like was though we're meant to do, what we're meant to be. And so I got hired on staff at that church at the end of 2010. So I retired at the end of 2009 from baseball, started youth pastor in the beginning of 2010, got hired onto the church staff by the end of 2010, and in 2015, November in 2015, 5 years later, we got appointed as the lead pastors of that same church. So we took over from my dad.
So you're here in Las Vegas, which is known as Sin City.
Yeah.
How does that change being a pastor when you're in Sin City?
You know what? Vegas is, it really is two towns. It really is.
The Strip and everywhere else?
And everywhere else. It's, and in a lot of regards, it really, the part of Vegas that is not the Strip, everywhere else, it's kind of a small town. It really, everyone knows everybody. Like there's connections like crazy, work connections, hotel connections. So everyone knows everybody. It really is a small town in that regard, and it really is a churched town. One of the most churched towns. There's more. It's on the high end in America of churches per capita. Like it really is a lot of churches. And so it really is woven into the culture of the city that faith does play a prominent role in the lives of the everyday citizens. Now, like the Strip is, I think of the Strip now, I think of traffic, I think of bad billboards that I want to have my kids look at the iPad as we're driving by, like, isn't that something nice on your iPad?
Yeah.
And try to avoid it. And it's a fun place to go to for a nice restaurant or a hotel for an anniversary or whatever. And the majority of the city kind of thinks of it that way. It's either a source of industry, a job, or it's a place to go for a birthday, maybe, but the rest of the town really is a normal town, and there really is lots of opportunities for ministry.
Just trying to think of what's the best way to ask this next question. How did you reconcile as when you were a player? Let's face it, baseball players are not choir boys.
Yeah.
As someone whose faith was very important to him, how did you reconcile that your teammates are doing things that may not have your values? Who's
crew.
a huge dude,
and he was fun, and it was an exciting environment, and the team embraced that whole ministry, and so that was really fun, and so every team was a little bit different.
They did like these feats of strength,
dude,
right? Where they were like breaking like wood and breaking bricks, and
the power team is what they were called. They would once a year they would do all the tear the phone books in half and like chest bump. It was really fun,
That's not what most people think of when they think of church. They don't think of tearing up phone books.
They had a knack, man, for getting people in the door, and so every team was a little bit different in terms of, okay, who are my guys here? Who am I going to surround myself with to be positive influences on me and to make some good choices? And so there were some seasons were better than others. You felt like you're on your own, and sometimes felt like you got sucked away a little bit. But overall, it felt like I was fortunate to have some good people around me every year.
When you're speaking now at your church, how often do you use either baseball analogies or sports analogies.
Way more than they're probably comfortable with. Like I'll say it all the time. Like, I'm sorry, it's just another baseball story. I'm sorry. If you're going to be a member at this church, then you better get used to this. Like this is just how it is. And it's kind of a joke around the church. Mm-hmm. Like, no, he's going. Here's another baseball story. Mm-hmm. And so it's people seem to be the people that at least stick around or that feel. Are affected hopefully positively by it. So,
do any moms and dads come up and say, "Hey, I got this son. Johnny's a lefty. Do you also do pitching lessons on the side?"
A lot. And you know what? It's like club baseball. It feels like a zillion-dollar industry. Parents want the very best for their kids. And so they'll look for anybody that has some type of experience. And so you'll play, little league baseball, and like there's flyers everywhere going to where there's a guy that got to AA and he's giving out lessons for $50 a pop. Like $50 for an hour? My gosh, what a racket! I was in the big leagues. I could charge. I could charge you $200 for this. And so people are like, Ron, if you did that and you organized it, you can make a ton of money. Like that's it. Really is. People are looking for quality, knowledgeable people to teach their kids, and so, it happens more than you think.
I read I found some LA Times article where you and your brother and your dad put together some type of camp, through the church.
Yeah, when was it? When my brother was, I think my dad first started it when my brother just got out of USC. He was in minor league ball, and my dad was thinking, what if we did something for the community? What if we just held a free baseball clinic, and Randy, you get all of your pro ball buddies, and Ron, you get all of your college buddies, and we'll do this one day, several hours it was the first Saturday of the year, every year, for like maybe 4 or 5 years in a row. And from 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds, we invited them, and it was free, and we usually got a couple hundred kids. And we would do an all-day baseball clinic, and then at the end, we'd preach the gospel, and we'd shake hands and give autographs, and it was like this really fun way to connect with the community and to kind of give back a little bit, and to capitalize on my brother's name and my name. We were both widely known in the city that we were from. Pico Rivera is a small town in that regard, and we were probably at that time the ones that were at the highest level of athletics from the people that were still playing, and so. It was a fun few years. It really was. We got all sorts of guys to come out there. Kotze was there one year with my brother. Seth Etherton was there. It was a fun few. Morgan Ensberg, a lot of good guys from USC and pro ball that were there, and we're just goofing off, teaching kids how to. We just made it work. Like there was one group where I was teaching kids how to like drag bunt, like, man, I hadn't done anything for a while, I'm like, okay, you're going to want to get that bat head out, and like telling 6-year-olds. So you're just making it work, and it was more of a way to just to give back to the community. It was a fun few years. It really was.
How much do you still watch baseball these days? And when you do, what jumps out at you? Like what makes you interested in baseball now?
I mostly follow the Cardinals because of Randy. Mm-hmm. My two boys are head over heels in love with the Oakland A's.
Okay.
They love him. My oldest especially.
What are their ages right now?
My oldest is 19. My youngest is 11.
Okay. Do you recall when they realized that Dad once played in the major leagues?
Yeah, it wasn't until years later, my oldest was, when I was in the big leagues, I think he was 5, 6, 7, and he was in the kids' room goofing off, playing his DS Nintendo thing with the other kids. He was just having some fun. And he like years later, he's like, even like just recently, he like, man, I can't believe I should have gone to the games. Like, what was I thinking? But it was like, man, you're 5 years old. Like, how could you even know? So now it's like he's really interested in following the A's just because there's that kind of connection. And so he's got alerts on his phone, and every day he's like, yeah, they won again. They're 2 games back of the wild card. It's really fun. It's really fun to like actually live it out with them now, in a way that was impossible when they were just so young. But yeah, so when I watch baseball, it's usually follow guys, individuals, the Cardinals, and then of course I'm a Dodgers guy, and so what'd you ask? What stands out from baseball? What stands out for me is just how much it's like the statistical analysis that Oakland began when I was just getting into the big leagues. It like spawned a whole like subculture of statistical analysis now that it's so all encompassing. Like back when I was there, like OPS was a big stat, on base plus slugging percentage. It was like, oh, you're such a stat rat. Your OPS. Like that's like the most base stat now that everyone, like, come on, now there's all.
Now it's OPS plus, and now it's all these other park factors.
I don't even know how they do it, but and so it's cool in a way to see that we were part of the dawn of that era. Like that Oakland and the team that I was a part of really was in a large part, the beginning of that whole way of seeing the game in a broader sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to me that I was, reporting on it and not even realizing the big picture of where this was going.
Yeah.
And now, and then it was just like the A's versus everyone. And now it's, now everyone has such enormous analytical teams that it's.
Yeah, if you're not using it now, you're a dinosaur. What's funny is seeing. I mean, my brother actually is in that world now, and the Cardinals are a very, they're a progressive team in the sense of they want to be on the cutting edge of all of this data analysis, but also at the same time they really do have a huge crop of old school classic guys that are really good at boots on the ground scouting, and so. One of my brother's jobs as the director of scouting and now as assistant GM is trying to marry the two and how to get them to integrate in a way that makes sense for both. That you're using the analysis techniques that are available, but also at the same time giving credence to and weight to the boots on the ground workers that can actually watch a game and see something that maybe data can't tell you. So it really is a unique way to try to get the most. I mean, some teams have sold out to one or the other. Some teams have sold out. We're all data. We don't care about as much as scouting. And some are like, we're going to leave that behind and just do the classic scouting, boots on the ground work. The good ones are the ones that know how to use them both, and that's what he's trying to do. He's really good at it too.
Yeah. All right, we should probably wrap up here. When's the last time you threw batting practice, or you threw the ball in a somewhat competitive sense?
In a competitive sense? Oh, my gosh. I tried to throw batting practice to my youngest son's baseball team last Little League season, and my shoulder's mush, bro. It feels like when I move it, it sounds like an old wooden clock. Just clunking, and it feels like someone put like a cake mixer thing in there and just turned it on full blast, and so it is mush. And so I throw darts, like really gingerly, and so when I really want to throw hard, I got to throw with my right arm. I'm getting actually pretty effective.
Really?
Yeah.
You're going to be another Pat Vendetti?
That sounds awesome, man, to be able to do both. But yeah, the batting practice and playing light catch with my kids is the extent of my throwing days these days.
I did a podcast with Pat Vendetti. He's incredible. He threw 4 innings against the Isotopes earlier this year. It's unbelievable to see just how effortlessly he goes.
I mean, he switched back and forth the whole time?
Yeah. The entire time. Yeah.
Amphibious.
Yeah.
No.
Ambidextrous. Amphibious is the fish. There's headlines where they get that wrong.
It doesn't have scales, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, dude.
My pleasure, man. This was thanks for the invite. This is really cool.
Yeah, thanks to Johnny Daskal. Another shout out to Johnny D for hooking us up.
That guy's the man.
Isn't he?
He really
I get to go see him Monday.
All right, what a treat. That guy's legit, and the perfect minor league game would be going back and forth between you and Johnny D. The River Cats playing the Isotopes. That's the perfect AAA game for me.
Yeah, that's what Johnny and I both really aspired to, is being the perfect AAA broadcasters.
And to have someone like me, the perfect AAA player, pitch you, that's the greatest game you could play. Right?
There we go. That's what you dream about your entire career.
That sounds good to me.
That's Ron Flores, and this was Life Around the Seams.